we're not quite finished with the Turkish Disarm because I got a couple of actually intelligent questions stroke comments which I thought were worth addressing. So the first question is, can't he just mullinet out of it and cut to my flank as I'm doing the bearing in? And this really speaks to what bearing in is supposed to do in the first place. So if we're just standing on an outside guard, the whole point of bearing in is I extend to get a little bit more leverage and I step extra wide using my feet rather than my arm to push the sword aside. If he does nothing, I change to an inside guard on a back traverse and hit him in the neck. People aren't going to stand there and do that for the most part. The assumption is that they will see this target around here, mullinet out of it, and try and hit me. But that's what I want him to do, okay? What I want him to do, we'll do this slowly, is see the target, disengage, and then all I have to do is change to an inside guard on a back traverse the way I was going to do normally. So my action is always going to be step, change. If he does nothing, I hit him in the neck. If he takes the invitation and comes forward to hit me, I step back out of the way, take the arm. So in the case of the disarm, he attacks, I parry. He recovers to an outside, I bear it aside. Now I should be able to reach his, go back to the guard, I should be able to reach the basket and do the disarm at that point. But if I can't, and I just end up with a bearing and I'm too far away, even if he cuts around at me, it doesn't matter because I just do what bearing in is supposed to do in the first place. So yes, he can, but that's kind of what I want him to do. Second question is, does it work with a curved blade? And this is important because Page says it's called the Turkish Disarm because it's the only thing that's viable against a saber. So why would he say that? Swap sides. So he says that because there are some disarms that are just bad with curved swords. So, for example, the one I use most often in free play by a long shot, you just give me a downright blow, is this kind of thing, where I come around and wrap my opponent's sword up. And with a flat blade, it's braced there, and I've got full control of it, and I'm not going to get cut or have it sliced, okay? And there are variations of that and all sorts of things. That's from silver, but you see variations in Fiore and things where you can grab the actual crossguard. If I do the same thing against a curved blade, things don't go so well. I get this, and all he has to do is pull, and there goes my arm. There's no way of jamming it up. So this disarm does not work with a saber. My arm will get sliced off. There are disarms that will work against sabers. So throw a cut number one, number two gently. Okay, anything where I'm just jamming a hilt up, that works just fine. Okay? Anything where I'm grabbing the wrist or the hilt, possibly even the forte of the sword, that will work just fine. So let's see if the bearing style Turkish disarm works with curved blades. Yep, that works just fine. Once more. So yes, it seems to work with curved blades just fine. So it's good, because if that didn't work with curved blades, it would definitely be wrong. The final comment is, does Page slip his leg on the defense? For the purposes of the Turkish disarm, it doesn't matter. My point is, you do what you would normally do. If you slip, you slip. You don't, you don't. Now, I don't want to get too deeply into this because it's long and complicated, but it is entirely possible for me to be in an outside guard on a narrow stance, and if somebody throws a cut at me, parrying without stepping, without slipping, with a nice straight arm and jam it up. That is a perfectly legitimate technique, okay? And that's kind of the London backsword stage gladiator thing, okay? It is also perfectly possible for me to parry on a slip closer to my body, getting the leverage on the foible. That's more the Highland style, and there's variations in between. When it comes to page, however, we have the added complication that I'm not standing heels in line in a nice grounded stance ready to do that. I am here. I'm deliberately presenting my line of weakness, my triangle point, to the attacker to strike into. Okay? So in this particular case, trying to stand here and jam it up is not very comfortable and it's not particularly viable. All Reese has to do is put a little bit of push into that and I start to topple over. I simply don't have the structure standing square to my opponent to do that. I have to move a leg. Okay? So I've got three choices. I can go back traverse. That is reasonable, but it means I don't have an advantage in position. It's where we are in a completely even stance, moving narrow to narrow, wide to wide, narrow to narrow. We're now on a line. I haven't got any advantage over my opponent, so I could do it. There are times when it's the right thing to do, but it doesn't really help me. I could step forward with my right foot to a nice grounded stance, okay? So this would seem to be okay, but it has a particular issue. If he cuts under my leg, he sees me coming forward to this parry, and I will die. Okay, so that's not a safe thing to do. Again, occasionally, if you really want to slam into people, Godfrey talks about this as a neat trick to have, is to come forward rather than step back on your parry, but it's dangerous, it's not the standard thing. So my only other option is to slip, to go to a narrow stance, but do so, instead of stepping here, where this leg is in danger, stepping here. Okay? And if I do that, I'm in a narrow stance on an inside guard. I've got my opponent's foible, but I've stopped it wide of the center line. Let's just orient that way. Yeah, about there. That'll do. Okay? So you can see I've opened up this side of my opponent's face by moving across the line this way. Okay? So of the three options, standing there is no good. Back traversing doesn't give me any advantage. Forward traversing is bloody dangerous because he can take my leg off. Slipping gives me an advantage in position and is completely safe. He can't come around me and hit me anywhere. So that's why I think that when Paige, okay, might not be particularly explicit about it, but I think your standard thing is to move to a narrow stance, but do so slipping rather than stepping forward or back traversing. So that's what I do.